Okay, so my topic is about whether or not all drugs should be legal and to what extent are drugs considered illegal. My official question is, can we ethically justify drug legality? Um, so, one thing I want others to know about this topic is that I think there's a lot of important information that comes from this topic. It's a very relevant and present-day issue and debate in politics. I think it's important to know the impacts of drug legalization currently, what is seen as legal, illegal, and what could potentially happen if all drugs were in fact legalized. So how did I come to talk about this? How did I come to care about this topic? So I participated in a debate my junior year on whether or not all drugs should be legalized in my global politics class, and I was on the side of pro-legalization. Some of my arguments included how the legalization would decrease drug-related gang violence. That's usually occurring between gangs over like turf and different markets within black market, and this is important because if all drugs were legalized, I believe that it would decrease this violence and actually help certain areas, cities, or countries that are dealing with large amounts of violence. Another one of our team's arguments were that if the substances were created safely and healthy, it would decrease the risk of STDs. And it could even be used if you were to manufacture the product safely. They could even be used as tax revenue, and the government could profit off of people buying it because it is a market. And our final argument, and this is kind of the one that relates to my TOK presentation, is that you should have freedom to intake whatever drug you would like, and it is unethical for other people to try and stop you from doing this, because you have your own right to take the drugs, even if they are deadly or have bad side effects. It should not be up to others to judge or decide what other people do. So how did I come to learn about how did I come to learn about this topic? So I did extensive research on the topic and various points of views related to the topic. Interviewed and talked to different people because I think it is quite a controversial topic due to the ethical concerns, personal circumstances, and connections that people may have revolving around the issue. But I definitely think it's an important one and one that shouldn't be ignored. I think, especially in a world where drugs are taking over news stories, and even we're hearing about the opioid epidemic in the United States, I think, generally speaking, drugs are taking over economies through the black markets, crippling nations and reputations, and I definitely think that there must be action done to ensure that this damage is fixed. And I also think in solving this issue, we tackle other issues such as through the economy, through gang violence, any social issues that may be resulting from this, and it could even have benefits on the climate. So if this issue were to be fixed, I also think it would, if action is taken now, then it will also prevent future damage. And I personally think that legalizing all drugs is one way to do this. And to answer my um, question for my presentation that we can ethically justify drug legality. I do think that it is possible the more you learn about the topic, the more your perception can change, will change, and you'll definitely care more about this issue. So from my personal experience, I do think that after learning about this topic and researching it, I definitely became more informed and aware of the different news stories and it coming up in debates at school. And I definitely think that you'll care more about it and want to get involved, especially that some of these issues related around drugs will be present, and some of which already are present in elections and laws. I definitely think it's important that those who are interested and those who do care about the issue speak their mind about it, and I think that social media is a good way for this. There's so many different ways that you can become aware of the topic. There's definitely connections that can be made through the TOK rubric with how I can present this issue. Some of the ways of knowing that I was thinking about include language, emotion, and reason. Firstly, like language. So I think, as I said earlier, this can be done through social media, posting things, posting opinions, awareness about the issues present, not just the use of drugs, even though it is an issue that is hurting the world right now. It's important to know the issues surrounding it. And so language is one of them. Another is emotion. I think that's important. I think this is an emotional issue, especially if people have drug users in the family. It does impact family dynamics. And going back to like my ethical position, which is reason that people should be able to use drugs if they want, and them being illegal is doing more harm than good overall. And one of my points of research that I'll be using for my presentation, or one of the real life situations, is what Portugal did with their laws. So I'll just read the following situation. So Portugal decriminalized many drugs in 2001 to positive effect. Portugal was struggling due to extreme marijuana and heroin use. People were injecting themselves in the streets, in public squares, and in gardens. Not a day passed when there wasn't a robbery at a local business or a mugging. 1 in every 100 Portuguese was battling a problematic heroin addiction at that time in the 80s. Also, the rate of HIV infections in Portugal became the highest in the European Union. In 2001, Portugal became the first country to decriminalize the possession and consumption of all illicit substances. Rather than being arrested, those caught with a personal supply might be given a warning, a small fine, or told to appear before a local commission, which often included a doctor, a lawyer, and a social worker. And in this, they would educate about treatment, harm reduction, and the support services that were available to them. The opioid crisis in Portugal soon stabilized, and the ensuing years saw dramatic drops in problematic drug use. HIV and hepatitis infection rates, overdose deaths, drug-related crimes, and incarceration rates, and HIV infections plummeted. The language also shifted. In the past, people referred to those that use drugs sneeringly as drogados or junkies. This word became known more broadly, and they changed their language from this to be more sympathetic and objective as just people who use drugs or people with addiction disorder, because that brings in the question on whether or not, because addiction is in fact a disease, and it's not fair to treat a disease as against the law if it's something that people cannot control. So I think the way that I'm going to organize my presentation is going to base it on a moral argument. I think that's the most important, and I'm going to use the area of knowledge that's human sciences to talk about behavior and addiction. I also think using scientific facts and statistics from some of my research and prior knowledge is important to know. I think it's important to know what happens when an area legalizes the drug, such as Portugal. I also think the idea of making something illegal makes people want to do that thing very more. One of the ways I'm going to connect this is behavior of children. I think it's similar. If you tell a child they're not allowed to do something, they're more likely to try and do that again because it's not allowed. And I think this topic is very significant. I think there's a lot of significance with it, including the societal benefits that are found from legalizing drugs, and show that if you take the rules away in some cases, they're more likely to be followed. I also think it's significant to mention the specific benefits in a country like Portugal that was at its lowest, and how a country like the US, maybe, which currently has an opioid crisis, could benefit from the similar action that Portugal took. And I think definitely I want to end the presentation with talking about the benefits and relating it back to my TOK argument that you can ethically justify the legalization of all drugs. I'm not really quite sure the wording yet. I'm going to need help with that. But yeah, I think I'm going to focus the issue around those points. Definitely use my prior experience and research. If there's a way that I can use an outside source, like with the paper, I might just talk about the debate, just kind of how I did it, and use the points in my debate in my actual presentation. I don't know, let me know what you think about that. But yeah, I think that's about it. I mean, I think it's a really interesting topic. I think it's one that, I talk about with my friends a lot, just what we think, and we talk about it in class a lot, and I think it could educate a lot of people, and I want to do that through my presentation, and I'm looking forward to making it around this issue. So yeah, thanks.